here in Tompkins County. I want to thank you for attending, I think, which is our 4th Community Voices Forum. It's a great opportunity to receive feedback from the public. I know we have a lot of folks signed up again, which is great to see, and new faces, which is great to see as well. I want to say before we get rolling, for all those that have participated in the last few weeks, thank you for your input. Thank you for taking the time and listening. Also want to thank you for sharing your experience and encouraging others to participate, which is an important part of this process. Want to acknowledge also we've received some feedback of some levels of frustration, which is understandable considering the current circumstances we're in with the pandemic, about the forms and the ability to provide feedback only through Zoom. We do have other avenues for feedback. One is we can put it through a paper process in terms of submitting a written document. Those documents are online. We can get those off the county website. You can also get them at the library by going online to the library. They can be dropped off here at the county administration, which is 125 East Court Street here in Ithaca. You can always email us comments as well. We are going to have a series of focus groups in the upcoming weeks, which will be advertised shortly for folks to sign up for. And that'll be a variety of different members from the community that can participate in that. We encourage you to participate in that as well. Also, lastly, I'll offer this as I have in the past. If anybody wants to have a conversation with me, one-on-one or in a group, and invite me to a group conversation, I would be more than willing to join you and your friends and colleagues to talk. More than willing to do that. So I just want to thank everybody again for participating. As I'll go through a little bit of a history again of the process, what we've gone through, where we're going. We have a series of work groups set up to take a lot of the public feedback, understand it, interpret it, as we move forward over the course of the next, we have over the past month and a half, as we will going forward in the next month and a half. I'm looking forward to another community-wide survey later on this year, and then also putting together some draft findings, recommendations that come from that process in the January-February timeframe, and then more public review and engagement over those draft documents, looking for an adoption of this reimagining public safety plan by the end of March, actually due April 1, and that would be a city and county joint plan, hopefully, that will be able to be submitted to the state for consideration. I've said this before and I'll say it again. For us, this is the first, I would say, step to a long stairwell of review and understanding of how we can do things differently in our community, how we can provide their services to our community members in the form and fashion that they're looking for. And while we have a report due April 1 of next year, it is not the end, but yet the beginning of the process for us. So on that note, I know some of our folks behind the scenes are getting ready to take some of our first participants. Again, want to thank everyone. If I don't see you, I hope you all have a good Thanksgiving. We'll be listening in on the other end of this throughout this evening. But stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll turn it over to our folks in production to get the first members of the public up to ask their questions.
Thank you, Jason. So I've begun sharing the screen here where we'll keep track of the speakers, and would like to invite the folks who are on our Zoom who've signed in. If you would use the raised hand feature on Zoom, we will be able to add your names to the list. And once we add a few names into the list, we'll begin giving folks 2 minutes to speak. So I'm going to type out your names for a moment, and then I will add you in. Our first speaker this evening will be Barbara Reagan-Spann. Barbara, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear
Great.
me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for having the forum. It's a, it's a welcome thing for the forum to be offered, and I feel grateful about it. Yeah, I want to say a few things. Number one is that at the time of I would say the heading of this comment is lack of responsiveness around obvious, egregious issues. So at Kaji Ferguson's trial, one of the policemen testified that there were 75 people on the Commons at the time of the incident. And he was asked by Seth Peacock to come up to the screen and count the number of people on the Commons at the time. It was a full view. You had a full view of the Commons at exactly the time of the incident. There were 14 people on the Commons, and 4 of them were police officers. There was absolutely no follow-up to this that the public heard about. Obviously, Kaji was exonerated because the charges were egregious from the get-go, and everybody knew that that was the case. The thing that I guess upset me was I did write about this incident that I thought got no attention at all. In other words, how could a police officer lie like that and have no consequence, and no one felt obligated to report back to the community to say, well, let's see, how would we interpret an incident like this? A thin, young, relatively small Black man, is piled on and tased by the police. A very large, apparently very big and overweight white drunken man behaving badly is allowed to just go back to his hotel room. And when the police person is asked why the response, why this response, he says, there were 75 people on the Commons. It's a thing of lack of responsiveness. So the community, I'm sorry. What is? Oh, no,
we're giving each individual two minutes, and your time just ran up, but thank you. If you want to finish that thought, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So, no, I just think it's kind of lack of paying attention to what community members are noticing is an egregious problem. I had 2 other examples. Can I give one?
If you wouldn't mind plugging in the chat so we can get some of the other folks who've raised their hand. We're going to take in comments that come through the chat just as we will through the voices. But thank you, Barbara.
Okay, you're welcome.
Other folks who'd like to raise their hands, just a reminder to attendees, it's technically a little bit easier if folks will, if you plan to speak, please raise your hand now, and I'll keep a running tab of speakers. Great. So first we have, let's see. Liza, you're up.
Yeah, this is Lisa Cobb.
Lisa, sorry about that.
Picking up where I left off last week. Well, first of all, I'm a member of Show Up for Racial Justice. Public safety means spending city funds on food security, housing justice, and meeting the needs of people living in difficult circumstances. The police do not and cannot address these. For too long, policing has been conducted based on the will of police unions, entrenched internal programs emphasizing a warrior mentality and a culture of silence around police wrongdoing, as Barbara just finished talking about. The City of Ithaca must stop using public funds for successful suits against the police. The responsible police should be held accountable for their abuses and criminal acts and dig the money out of their own pockets. This money that the city no longer pays could then be reinvested in effective and needed social services. There are crimes based on the debunked broken window theory, and a significant part of the, quote, increased crime complained about by the Ithaca police. These broken window crimes provide the police with a reason to stop, arrest, incarcerate ever more brown and Black bodies, repeal these laws, and obviate a big part of police funding. Very recently, Ithaca Police Department Officer Monticello made a wrongful arrest of a Black man who had been threatened with a knife in the vicinity of a political rally. The officer not only failed to protect public safety, but encouraged a larger demonstration that led to more unnecessary arrests and the use of chemical weapons on Ithacans. This police officer did not protect us or our community, and as far as we know, has not been disciplined for his discriminatory policing and escalation.
Thank you, Lisa. Next, we have Alejandra.
Hi. Am I? Oh,
Yep,
are you
on.
here? Oh, great. Awesome. Okay. Hi. So this is my first time being here. And I just wanted to share a little bit about that. When I first heard about this public forum, to be honest, I didn't want to come because I thought, what a waste of time. This is still pretty much how I feel about this. I'm grateful that some people are taking time to be here and speak up about issues with policing. But I generally think that this is really a distraction from demands that the community has already made to see the police defunded. Reforms have historically not worked, and they're not going to work here. And rather than addressing what the community is actually asking for, we're doing this thing where we can kind of like reimagine the kind of reforms that we want. We don't want reforms. We want to see it defunded, and we want to see that money go back to the community, especially during a pandemic when people are really struggling and programs for the community are, losing their funding and struggling. So I feel a lot of frustration, and I feel that this is not a really safe space for, people of color to come and voice their opinions, because it's all to city officials and to other cops and things like that. So I want to express my disappointment that we're not taking a stronger stance as a community on making this safe for people of color, and to say once again that there have been really clear demands on how to make this community safe, and that they're being ignored. So going forward, I think that one thing we really need to see is some repercussions for Vincent Monticello and the things that we have seen happening, the racist arrests that have been happening and treatment of community members in Ithaca.
Thank you, Alejandra. Next, we have Lisa Christian.
Yes, Lisa Christian. Thanks for allowing me to speak. And I'd just like to say that in order to reimagine public safety, it's necessary for the police department to not only have the intercultural and diversity training, but to do it in a way that is going to lead toward changed worldviews, changed perspectives, which will then result in changed behavior. If just to have the culture training or diversity training, but the officers are not changing their mindset, it doesn't help in reimagining public safety. So I understand from some of the previous webinars and meetings that we've had, there are several programs within the Ithaca Police Department, and they focus on diversity training and several different types of training. But I would like to see the focus on the officers not having the training just to say we've ticked this box or we've checked this box, but to really see some changed perspectives and worldviews, particularly as it pertains to Black and Brown communities. Thanks.
Thank you, Lisa. Next, we have Andy. Oh, it looks like Andy lowered his hand. Andy, if you'd like to speak, I'll have you raise your hand again. I'll add you back to the list. Next, we have Sarah.
Sorry.
No worries.
I spent some time today looking at the timetable and the process. So my questions are about those things. In the timeline, it says that community groups convene for conversations with working group members in December and November. Can you explain how and when that happens? It's now the end of November. Second, is membership in the working groups fixed? I see that there are 5 staff members from the Center for Policing Equity in one or more of the working groups, and a lot of city and county staff members, 8 elected officials and some faculty from the schools. I counted just 4 people who work for nonprofit agencies, including just one who was a formerly incarcerated person, and none from drug and alcohol services, mental health, domestic violence, or anti-poverty organizations. And this seems odd to me. Also, there are none from the unions that represent police or sheriff's department. I would think all of these are stakeholders in our community, very involved in wanting to know how these findings are going to work out. Another question is, are the 5 working groups meeting now? And if so, can the public know what they're doing? Are there agendas or minutes available? Can we observe their meetings? And what are they working on? What problems, research, potential changes is the focus of each group? In public statements, it has been reported that the mayor said there are structural problems in the police contract that pose barriers to effective police staffing. If the contract is central to solving some of the safety problems, what information is available to the public about that? And I'll have more questions I'll send in writing. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. One question I can briefly answer here is that we will be publishing a list of the working groups by what they're working on and their deliverables early next week. So that'll be one piece that we are planning on publishing. But thank you for sharing the other questions. We'll certainly keep those in mind and work answers into many of the questions that have been brought up in these forums in some of our communications toward the end of this month and into the beginning of December as well. So thank you for sharing that. Next is Andy.
Hi there. I have a couple of thoughts. I appreciate the woman who spoke with us from Camden. I think there was a lot to learn from the work that she and her team have done. Keep tracking data, I think, is a great idea. I think accountability from a non-IPD group is essential. I question the training before entering the police force, as well as professional training once in the police force. And I think that needs to be seriously looked at and improvements there. And I believe there also needs to be more understanding of mental health conditions and certainly racism in the training. I would love to see mental health counselors available when 911 is called, having a person who is knowledgeable available to go with the police. And I certainly think there's people in the field of mental health and social work where that position could be funded, and you could have people that are very interested to do this work and support available 24/7 on a rotating basis. And that's really all my thoughts. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Next, we have Maddie Helper.
Hi, yeah, so my name is Maddie and I grew up here in Ithaca, and some of the thoughts, actually, Alejandra said a lot of these things that I've been thinking really well. But when I started looking into the information online about these meetings, I saw the phrase reimagine public safety, and I was like, oh, that sounds like a great and necessary thing for our community. But then after that, I was looking at all the materials that are there, and it's asking for people's thoughts on their experiences with the police and all these presentations that are almost exclusively focused on the police. And there's like so much to criticize about policing on all scales throughout history, including present day Ithaca. But I just think that it's really ironic and problematic to set this task of reimagining, and then we're capping our imaginations to only think about policing. And as some people have said, in order to actually reimagine public safety, we have to think creatively about things like community-based de-escalation approaches, and holistically about things like housing, health services, childcare. All of those things are necessary to keep people safe. But then the other thing that's really like upsetting and ironic about that is that there are people within the community. We have so many organizations and initiatives in Ithaca, some newer, some older, that have been working on these issues and that have been doing that imagining and making those things start to become realities. And like, I understand that this process was prompted by Cuomo's requirements, and that the Department of Public Safety has this whole institutional definition. But if we want to call this reimagining public safety, then why is it a process that's currently publicly promoting all of these presentations on policing practices? There aren't any materials presented in that, on those websites and through these processes that are centered on the approaches, the practices, visions, needs of people in our community who are already doing the work of imagining and building a safer community for everyone. So I think if this is going to have any integrity as a process, it needs to be prioritizing people of color who are working on these issues from within the community, and putting those people on any relevant committees. And I, for one, would feel safer and have more trust in these processes if that was happening.
Thank you, Maddie. Appreciate the feedback and points. Ruth Yarrow is up next.
Yes, I agree with Maddie and others that big changes are needed to provide human needs in the county, and that ultimately is what would reduce violence and need for safety. But just to be more specific, I can think of things that would increase the public trust in the police department. One would be to end the SWAT truck deployment and use, to return the military equipment so that we are not a militarized police force, to establish a police review board that had real powers, subpoena powers, and to have very effective, hopefully, de-escalation training so that we don't run into the kinds of things that Barbara Reagan-Spann was mentioning. A mental health response team would take some of the weight off the police department, and I think it's important to look at their needs. We need to consider renewing the contract, which is very much overdue. Hopefully in that contract would be some fresh ideas, such as having the police buy their own insurance so that when something goes wrong, they're the ones who are accountable, and they will know that up front. I think it'd be wonderful if many people in the public would speak up about their concerns about the police department so that this reimagining process really has strong community base. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ruth. Next we have Ari.
Hello everyone, can you hear me?
Yes.
Cool. I've been to a lot of these and I'm not amused. I just wanted to say Black Lives Matter, defund the police. I find the lack of action by city council and the mayor to be disgusting throughout this summer. Our local government is a glorified PTA made up of out-of-touch politicians who would rather see a bigger office than help save the lives and livelihoods of their constituents. Savante has the backbone of a well-cooked noodle, and his consistent praise of police officers for not being as racist is gross. Whatever excuses you guys have for not acting on this and constantly deflecting our demands with these reforms, I really don't care. What you can do here is change your tone. Stop preserving this thin blue line and this respectability politics of police officers. There are no good police officers, and the more you congratulate them when they don't beat, kill, or chemically attack people, the more people will excuse their actions when they do. Shape up. I'm talking to you, Savante. I yield my time.
Thank you, Ari. Next, we have Sky.
Yeah, so I'm gonna state a few demands that have been said a lot, but I haven't heard exactly at this meeting. We need, there's calls for an 80% cut of the police budget from 12.7 million to 2.5 million, and a reinvestment in community health. We want to put money toward $2.8 million towards GIAC and $5.06 million towards the Ithaca Youth Bureau. I recognize that the government doesn't move super fast all the time, and these are big demands, but I think they should be done. And also there's something which could be done pretty easily to fire Vincent Monticello. There's some pretty undefensible video of him arresting a black man while a white supremacist was yelling at him to die. There seemed to be no reason for that arrest, and I haven't heard of any repercussions on Vincent Monticello. And we have such a big police budget, but also such a big problem with homelessness and poverty in this city. And I think that's not great that we kind of value these police who don't really have our best interests at heart more than actual people who are struggling in our city and could use more help. I don't really have anything else to say.
Great. Thank you, Sky. Next, we have Kate L. Sorry, I clicked the wrong button. Kate L, you're up.
Hi there. Yeah, I wanted to address what second Lisa brought up in terms of needing more training, specifically diversity training. Someone else mentioned de-escalation training. So if you look at any of the documentation that the police have put out in regards to training since 2019, especially, they have been doing that. They do sexual harassment training, suicide prevention, mental health, diversity, inclusion, race training, transgender mindfulness, mental health first aid, et cetera, et cetera. There's a long list of training that they've quote unquote been doing for years. There's also articles on this. They're required to take cultural competency training, which I'm assuming is supposed to be diversity training. So they already do a lot of these things that people are mentioning that we should, as action steps that we should take for police reform. Obviously, this has not worked. We have seen, as Liza mentioned, or Lisa Cobb mentioned, that, you know, we are still having racist cops like Vinny Monticello, lock away and unlawfully arrest anyone, but specifically a young Black man. So these trainings have been going on for years and aren't effective. That is not something that's actually going to change the current status of our police department, which is a white supremacist, racist, capitalist, property caring about organization. So I just want to address Lisa and anyone else that thinks that the training is going to absolve the IPD of, these issues that we continue to have. It's not. So that has been evidence over years, and you can find that documentation. You're also welcome to reach out to me and I can further enlighten you. Thanks.
Thank you, Kate. Next, if Rogue, if you'd like to speak, please use the raised hand function. I saw your hand lower, so I'm removing your name for now, but use that if you'd like to speak. But for now, next will be MS, and then Rogue will be next.
Yeah, hello.
Hello.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question for the mayor. Given all the discussions we have had, it seems like proceeding to with the incidents of October 22 without the review of what happened that day, it doesn't seem meaningful. So my question, I have two questions to the mayor. Has he looked at the videos of October 22? And is anything going to happen with regards to looking at and evaluating what happened that day before proceeding further with any of the arrests that day?
Thank you. The mayor isn't on to respond at the moment. We're just taking input in, but he's listening into those questions, and I believe he also spoke to it in last Friday or Saturdays, and we can find the link to his answer to that specific question in his closing to that. But are there any other?
I don't know if he answered that question. All he said was he hadn't heard from the state, which is fine. All I am asking is, why don't we wait to hear from the state before we proceed using the city resources to prosecute people? Why don't we wait to hear from the state first?
Yeah, I'll make sure we pass along the question, or that he gets it. Thank you. All right. Next, we have Rogue. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so I've already roasted this whole thing for 2 weeks running now. So I think I'm gonna play this game for once and actually reimagine public safety for a second. Let's try it out. If I could imagine public safety, I would imagine that there wouldn't be records of an officer, Banfield, who was just made lieutenant, getting suspended for making gay pictures of a fellow officers. I would also imagine that there wouldn't be a former chief who was accused of rape and had it covered up from the city of Ithaca. I would also imagine Scott Guerin not getting a job at IPD at all because of his background and alcohol issues. I would also imagine that, other instances like the DA invested ignoring an officer lying on a sworn affidavit in a Najee Green case. There's a lot of things that happen that I would love to imagine actually not existing that currently exists now. And I really, really would love to see that change. So if I imagine for a second, IPD without corruption, without covering things up and sweeping everything under the rug. And if I imagine a system that actually holds itself accountable and have it not actually be a utopia, then I'd feel a little bit safer as a Black woman who lives in this city. But since we are currently not actually in utopia and we're in this world that consistently is headed by people who are corrupt in every way, I guess I'll just wake myself up. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we have Kai Smith. Kai?
Hi, I don't have a ton to say. I just want to talk about my experience with IPD recently, honestly, over just this summer. I've been there for the peaceful protests and watching on multiple occasions all of the people I love be bullied, torn down, brutalized by the police in Ithaca. I'm blown away. I'm shaking right now, even reimagining it, because this is truly a violent gang in my eyes. The way that they take advantage of people, they take advantage of their power, they show up to mental health crises with guns. and they don't even feel weird about that. Like it's normal to show up with a gun for someone who is terrified or depressed or like, I don't know. It's hard to describe what that feels like, to know that people are funneling all of our money into them when they're misgendering people, abusing people, raping people, stealing from people. The stories I've heard from all of the people around me that have ever called the police for help have always ended in regret. And that is pure evil. I just don't understand how there's anyone supporting them when all they're doing is taking advantage of us. I saw minors getting pepper sprayed as they were backing away from the police department. I saw police officers laughing at them. I saw the shit they've said to me and my friends is unacceptable. Just fucking defund IPD. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Kai. Are there other folks who'd like to use the raised hand feature and provide some comment this evening? I'll give it another minute or so if there are any individuals who'd like to raise their hands. And I'll take a moment to just remind everyone that's participating tonight and everyone that's also tuning in on YouTube. Thank you for your input. And as a reminder, we're going to be, we're using the transcripts from each of these and taking the input into account as the city and county put together the plan for reimagining public safety. So these pieces of input are being taken into account for both that plan and future community engagement opportunities moving forward. And again, as I've stressed in the past few weeks, thank you everyone for your patience and understanding as we have to do some of these things digitally with the pandemic that's ongoing in order to help keep the community safe from the disease. So thank you for being patient. And as Jason mentioned in his opening comments, we do have opportunities to engage with some kiosks at the library and paper forms that folks can use to provide input on the same question being posed here in these Community Voices town halls. And thank you to all of you that have shared these things with your peers to encourage more community input from your networks and your communities. So I'll give it another minute or so for any individuals who would like to raise their hand and lend their voice here on this public forum. And otherwise, we'll move forward with the next one being on December 4th and December 5th and announce shortly after that future community engagement opportunities beyond these forums. And for folks who've already chimed in this evening, I hope that you're able to put additional thoughts in the chat if you have additional thoughts or questions, or through the survey. And we did get one question in the chat of what we're doing to help marginalized communities. And I'll speak really briefly to, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're going to be publishing the list of focus groups that we'll be having. And those cross many different marginalized communities in Ithaca and Tompkins County. And we'll be publishing a more thorough list of the focus groups, but those focus groups are certainly designed to help directly engage and offer safe spaces for engagement and feedback and input directly to those marginalized communities. And we're working with community partners and organizations, nonprofits, and others to help invite folks to those focus groups, and other folks that may not be able to make it to a focus group will be interviewed individually by trained facilitators that we're working with. And some of these things will happen digitally due to the pandemic. And again, thank you for your patience on that. All right, I'll give it another 30 seconds or so if there's any other individuals who'd like to raise their hands. But thank you again, everyone, for your questions and your input today. And looking forward to the forums on December 4th and 5th, and then future engagement opportunities following those. All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in tonight, and thank you everyone who has been on the Zoom for providing your input. Again, please share these opportunities with your friends and networks to ensure that we get a wide swath of public input throughout the process. And we look forward to hearing more input from the community moving forward.